Good morning, colleagues. This is Mr. Ndanganeni Enoch Chidabu from Siyazi Media. I'm seated here this morning with our former SANTACO president, Mr. Phillip Taaibosch. We're going to learn a lot today from him. The experiences that he went through as a president, and even before he became the SANTACO president. I think he has much to give the insight to us. My president, you're welcome. And our session won't be very long, but I think the information that we have, maybe it can take us weeks seated here trying to gather information, because then now the experience is one thing that you don't accumulate overnight. My president, you're welcome. This is our beginning of our interview. I have very few questions, but I think the answers will be more. Mr. Taaibosch, allow me to now start this conversation. We learn a little bit less from our office about you and the work that you do. But today you offered us an opportunity to come and source the information directly from the reliable source. Mr. Taaibosch, can you please introduce yourself to our viewers, and then we can get down to the interview. Thank you.
My name is Phillip Taaibosch. I am a taxi operator. As far as business is concerned, I'm living in Welkom, Bronville, a suburb which was formerly used as a colored suburb. I'm very happy, Enoch, that you, when you addressed me, you said former president. I would like to be addressed in that particular fashion because as of last week on the 9th, SANTACO elected a new president. And that's where I would want it to end, where the president himself, Mr. Abnazebe, will take credit for being the president of SANTACO. So I think in a nutshell, I've just given you a little bit of my history, where I reside in Bronville. But in fact, where I hail from, it's a little town in the Free State called Brantford. And well, I schooled also in a little town in the Free State called Windbeck. So that's who Phillip Taaibosch is. I'm married to Pascalina. We have just on the 14th of May, Saturday, celebrated our 40th anniversary. We've got 2 children, a boy and a girl. Yeah, that's who Phillip Taaibosch is.
Former President, I got an interesting question for you. That the roots of a human being is where everything lies. I heard the story about the Khoisan. Do you mind to touch on that?
I'm a Khoisan by birth, and I am associating myself fully with the Khoisans and the tradition of the Khoisans. I'm coming from a royal family, of which the Taaiboses comes from. The family, the real tree where the Taibos come from, they come from a tribe called Koranas. So that's my bit with the Khoisans, and I am also an advisor to the local prince here called we actually call him Ubaha Taaibosch. I think that's my history as far as the Khoisans is concerned.
Thank you very much. I think it's always good when you talk about somebody knowing exactly where do they come from and where are their roots. So to me it was very interesting to know where Mr. Taaibosch comes from. Now, before the SANTACO, the life of a human being always starts from somewhere. I trust that there is some unrevealed information about where Mr. Phillip Taaibosch started before you become a member of SANTACO, before you become a taxi operator.
Yeah, and thanks for that. My work experience actually started in the engineering industry. But before the engineering industry, let me indicate that I was a footballer by profession at that particular time, around 1976, when I was spotted by two brothers, two Howard brothers, and the other two friends. I cannot mention completely their names because I don't have their permission. But these guys, they actually, we were playing against the club I used to play for, Home Sweepers in Brantford. And they were playing for Eureka from Welkom Bronville. And after the game, these guys decided to, actually they robbed me, because Eureka was owned by one of the famous school principals in the Free State. And they indicated that he is calling me. He was sitting in a bus. And as I was getting into a bus, people were telling me that he's sitting in the back. And only to realize that he was not in the bus. So the bus drove. Nobody knew at home where I was. During those years, you would remember that we didn't have cell phones. So they had to use their own means the following day to inform my family that I'm in Welkom, and well, they introduced me to the Eureka team members on Monday. It was on a Sunday when they took me. Monday, they then introduced me to the team members. And the next thing they told me that the following day, Tuesday, I was going to start working at a company called Gallison Manufacturing, which was an engineering company. I worked at Gallison Manufacturing as an ordinary laborer, while these guys were tradesmen. They were welders and boiler makers. So they then taught me how to weld, and eventually, after about 8 months, I became their supervisor. It was amazing actually how things happened, but I became their supervisor, and I must thank God for the hearts those guys had. Not a single one of them ever showed anger. But I must indicate in the life of my football, I had a lot to do, it had a lot to do with being involved in football. I became a captain of a club that we established called Determined Brothers. And also I became a football referee under the auspices of Sanfra. Now, Sanfra, it's the referees body which belonged under Sanfa at the time. Today we've got Safa. At that time it was Sanfa, headed by its then President George Tabe. George Tabe was the president of Sanfa. It was called the South African National Football Association. And so under Sanfa, I was then a referee under Sanfra, which is the South African National Football Referees Association. I qualified as a referee during those years, around 1980. So I think I've given sort of my life history to you, and I worked at Nordberg Engineering until Nordberg decided to relocate its business to Vereeniging, and they made me an offer of which I declined to actually move with the company to Vereeniging. But before that, let me say before that, I think I've just put it upside down. Before that, while I was at Nordberg, I must indicate that my wife's father was a taxi operator. I married in a taxi business family. My wife's father was a taxi operator, and I had one of the brother-in-laws who actually was pestering me in applying for taxi licenses. I never wanted to be, must just emphasize, I never wanted to be involved in the taxi industry. As you would remember the history of the taxi industry at that time, it was full-blown violence, where people were dying, where people were fighting. So I didn't want to have anything to do with the taxis. But it happened that one day my brother-in-law came to my work with my wife, and they were requesting for my ID. There was something urgent they were going to do, and it needed my ID. I didn't know that the intentions was to apply for a taxi license. So the next thing is that after about a month after that, I received a letter from the then Transportation Board, which was stationed in Potchefstroom, and that my application for taxi licenses has been approved. It was a shock for me because I never applied for taxi license, and I went to my wife and I told her. She said, "You remember when we took your ID? My brother insisted that if you are not going to buy taxis but to have taxi license because you'll need it one day." And he was right. As Norbert closes in Welkom, I needed those licenses, and that's when I started operating taxis in Welkom. So I think that's the history in a nutshell, how I came into the industry. But as having been in the industry since 1990, no, I'm lying, not 1994, around 1983, I think in 1994, yeah? No, 1990, there was the first transport forum, which was established in Welkom, of which two gentlemen approached me, and cannot use their names also because I don't have their permission. They approached me while I was busy manufacturing butler proofs for my windows at home, and they told me there is an urgent meeting which was going to be held by government, and they would want me to be part of that meeting. I never knew that the intention was to go and expose me in a position of being the secretary of the transport forum in Welkom at that particular time. So from being the secretary of transport forum, that's where my interest actually came very much forward. I was a member of a taxi association called Bronville Taxi Association, and later joined the Welkom United Taxi Association under the amalgamation process of associations. So I would think that's where my interest in the taxi industry started growing. But in fact, I must indicate that there was a regional council at the time called it was called the Goldfields Taxi Region. No, sorry, not Goldfields, Western Central. It was Western Central Regional Taxi Council. Of which I became an additional member of its executive. I think the whole thing about me getting involved in the taxi industry started with the Western Central Regional Taxi Council, because from the regional council they actually asked me to not involve myself in any political organizations, so that they can make use of me, because they have seen some talent in me as far as the interest of the taxi industry is concerned. So I think in about 6 months in the Western Central Regional Taxi Council, I was then promoted to become the deputy chairman of that council, of the Western Central Regional Council. I think it was around 1995, 96. And then the Western Central Regional Taxi Council deployed me into the province. It was called the Free State Provincial Taxi Council. In the Free State Provincial Taxi Council, I became the deputy chairperson of the council, and later became the chairman of the Free State Provincial Taxi Council, which I held the position for more than 14 years. I think I've given you, and also my life as a taxi operator, I've just given you that.
Yeah,
but I will be led by yourself.
I've noticed that, and I'm very grateful that now the information is just flowing and we can be able to follow as well. As a founder member of SANTACO, do you mind to share with us how did you come about the initiative of forming SANTACO?
Let me indicate that before SANTACO, there was a body called SANTACO, the South African Taxi Council. Now, the South African Taxi Council was established in 1996 as a body which the industry itself regarded as a mother body of all taxis in South Africa, which will have a voice to speak on behalf of the industry with government and business. But because there were problems of other role players who were not elected in Cape Town in 1996, the majority of the mother bodies then disregarded and discarded SANTACO. In the leadership of SANTACO took then a decision around the year 2000 to write a letter to the Minister of Transport then, Minister Abdullah Minister Abdullah Omar. Yeah, that's right. So a letter was then written to Mr. Abdullah Omar, Minister Abdullah Omar, of which SANTACO was requesting that the minister be appointed as an administrator of SANTACO with a thinking or with an idea of establishing a proper recognized national body of the taxi industry in South Africa. Hence, the discussions within the taxi industry started around, I think around October 2000, whereby Minister Dalla Omar appointed the then MEC of Transport in Limpopo, MEC Reverend Farasani, to chair the amalgamation of all taxi bodies in South Africa with a view of establishing a national body. Now, at that time, there were more than 37 mother bodies of the taxi industry in South Africa. A clear-cut case that you could not, and no government could speak to 37 mother bodies with different constitutions, and with also associations which were plenty in South Africa. So it was to be difficult for government to speak to the taxi industry unless they had an identity and they had a body that would be mandated and take responsibility on behalf of the taxi industry. But as